Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of Nelson's Corner. A look at various C-sharp topics. Da-da-da. With your host, Mr. Nelson LeKay.
Hey.
Hey. And Zach Parrish.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going all right. What's wrong?
Nothing. That was the best intro ever.
Well, I'm glad you liked it. Myself, Jason Busby. So, basically, we just wrapped up with episodes 1, 2, and 3, a discussion of LINQ. Now, in covering LINQ, there were several sub-topics that Nelson wanted to get into. Things such as delegates, lambdas, extension methods, etc. Now, Nelson also keeps a very close eye on the forums over at 3D Buzz, and there have been a few posts that have come in from people saying that they just don't see the usefulness of delegates. And, of course, as I've already said in the past, it can be a bit confusing to somebody who's new to the world of programming when introduced to delegates through simple coding examples. It really is difficult to see how they can be important, for the simple fact that your beginners are thinking, why can't I just call that method directly? That would just make a lot of sense, and it would save us a lot less typing. But when you get into more complex scenarios, there are definitely situations that come about all the time where delegates make life much simpler. So Nelson wanted to do one more episode where we're going to go back and we're going to address the usefulness of delegates. So Nelson, let me go ahead and turn it on over to you.
Hey, all right, so what do you remember about delegates, Zach?
I remember that they're a way that you can take a method and essentially store it down in a variable-like form. That the delegate itself is kind of like a definition. I don't want to use the word generic because I know that comes with its own baggage, but it's a definition for a method that's going to take in a certain number of arguments, and you can feed in various methods as long as they have the same number of arguments.
Yes. So, really the thing about delegates is you're delegating control from one class or one object to another object. And I can demonstrate that by bringing up a really quick example. So I'm going to write a console runner class. And he's going to have a method called run. And then this is going to be an infinite loop with too many parentheses. And then all the loop is going to do is going to give the user a prompt and then take input. Okay, so the thing about this class is imagine that it were very large and that console runner had a lot of different things that it did. It read console input, it parsed out what the user wanted, it constructed, really cool prompts and help files and all this cool stuff. But really, you want it to be kind of generic. You want to be able to use this console runner in a bunch of different situations. So we can quickly implement a small design pattern called the strategy. And we're going to make this a abstract class. And Zach, really quickly, an abstract class is a class that cannot be instantiated.
Okay. Thank you.
So we cannot directly instantiate this class, but we can use it in other situations and kind of replace it with one of its children when we want to. So then we're going to have a public abstract void on input, and on input is going to take a string of input. And our console runner is going to have a reference to this console runner strategy. And I'm going to actually make it simpler by having it pass into the run. And whenever input is sent, we want to do strategy.onInput, input. Now, obviously, we can't use this right now because we can't actually instantiate this class to pass into run. But what we can do is define a child of this class.
Do you want to check your spelling on strategy?
Yes, I do actually. I typed too fast.
It's okay.
Alrighty. Usually I actually have there's a really nice, actually I'm going to show you something awesome real fast. Check this out. Control RR, bam.
Oh, wow.
And of course I missed the cap. I have this really nice spell checker in my Visual Studio instance, so if anyone knows me, I'm not particularly good at spelling, so that helps a lot.
You're doing fine.
Okay, so this is going to inherit from this, and then it's going to implement a single method that's essentially going to...
And an interesting thing you can show right now is what ReSharper was doing. If you comment that method back out, you'll notice
yeah. If we comment this out, we'll notice that ReSharper wants me to implement members. And then we get that.
It has to, because we're using an abstract class, and because we're using an abstract method in there, it needs an implementation to anybody that inherits from it.
Okay.
Exactly. And the echo strategy is going to do exactly what it sounds like. It's going to echo whatever is sent in. So at this point, does this sort of make sense? We have this kind of this class template, I guess what you could call it, or this abstract class interface that we can't directly instantiate, but we can create children that provide their own functionality for on input.
Okay, I'm with you to a point, though honestly I haven't really played enough with abstract classes to say that I've got a super firm grasp on what you're talking about.
It's just a special kind of class that you cannot instantiate from, so you can only extend it.
Okay.
But then by putting abstract members in it, abstract methods, we force whoever extends or inherits from this class to implement that functionality, which means then we know if we're then working with that extended class, we know that functionality will be there.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. It sounded for a minute like you were saying we can't. It's a class that we can't inherit from, but when we inherit from it,
well, it's a class we can inherit from.
Okay.
We can't instantiate it.
Okay.
We
All
can't
right.
do a
All
new
right. I'm
one.
making sure I heard you right.
Okay.
Okay, does this make sense? We are invoking the run method with the echo strategy.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we run this,
Now, just so you're not confused, but what does run take in?
Right now it's just a black screen in my way.
If you don't mind, Nelson, I'm going to ask Zach a couple questions real quick. What does
Yeah.
run take in?
It's going to take in console runner strategy,
All right.
which still has strategy on it. I just thought I'd point that out.
But what are we sending run down here on line 36?
Well, we're sending it the echo strategy.
Okay, so does that make sense to you? Because what does it take in?
It takes in the console runner, and then hang on, and then we're passing it something else, but that's because we were able to extend the original console runner and know that they have the same. I don't want to say type of functionality.
You're close. You're in the right direction.
It's like it fits the profile
it's
that we've
because
defined.
Echo strategy
Yeah.
is a console
Right,
runner
okay.
strategy.
Yeah.
I just wanted you to lock
right.
that into your head.
Yeah.
Okay.
and we're definitely going to go over abstract classes and interfaces really, really, really in depth, but this is sort of the behavior that delegates kind of allow you to do really simply, so I just kind of have to make this seemingly convoluted example to show that.
Sure.
So when we pass in this new echo strategy, it's going to turn into this variable that gets called.
Okay.
So we can say, bam. And so when we type stuff into this prompt, the echo strategy prints out
Pulls it
whatever we
back
type
out.
in. And we can replace this and do as many strategies as we want, and then choose which one to pass into runner.
Like you could create something random like an append strategy, which it does inherit from. Yeah, it would inherit from console runner strategy and have its own functionality. Then you could swap that in instead.
Yep, and we can even do that runtime if we change this up a little bit. But yep, so
But I see what you're saying.
Okay, so now let's say we do not want to deal with all this garbage because it's pretty redundant and annoying. So I'm going to go ahead and comment this
Now,
out.
when you say this garbage, you mean creating the abstract class and then inheriting different methods from it?
Yep.
Or different other
Essentially.
classes? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So we're going to yank all of that out, completely nuke this console runner strategy, and replace it with an action that takes a string.
Okay.
And then we're going to invoke it directly, so strategy input, or we could call strategy.invoke input. Invoke input, or just use the shorthand.
Making sure I remember all of the things that have been discussed up to this point. Action doesn't have a return type.
Yep.
And a func does.
Yes.
Okay.
And so now we can pass in a lambda
Yeah.
in here.
Input goes to console right line. Input. Okay.
And then we run it, and we get the exact same behavior. So that delegate has essentially saved us having to deal with this, maintaining this whole abstract class and inherit from and all that stuff.
Now,
It's allowed us...
Go ahead. Which part exactly was the delegate?
This part.
Okay.
Because action string is a delegate provided by the .NET Framework for you.
All right.
So does that sort of maybe clear something up just a little bit?
I see how we were able to replace a lot of code with just like more or less a single line.
Yep. And the next thing to talk about would be multicast delegates. So a multicast delegate is a delegate that does multiple, or a delegate that contains a reference to more than one method. And so we're going to replace this again with, instead of taking a strategy, it's going to take an array of strategies. And then we're going to do for each so now we take an array of strategies. Quick thing, or no, I'm going to do that down here. So now we have our echo strategy, and let's say we want to make another one called a echo plus high. And he says, okay, so now we want to pass in both these strategies into this one method. And you see that this is a...
It is an array that we're taking in now instead of just a single object. Thank you.
Okay, so that now we can pass in multiple ones, and I'm going to use an implicitly typed array here to do new echo and new echo plus high, and it's not showing up for some reason.
I was wondering if you need to be feeding in a console runner strategy instead of the echo strategy up on line 28, but maybe I'm just misinterpreting.
Oh, yeah, you're totally right. My bad.
Very good.
Okay, so now we have this, and it is actually a okay, we can't use an implicitly typed array because these aren't the same type, technically, even though they can be casted to the same type. So I'm going to have to manually say that we want to essentially cast these into console runner strategies.
Okay.
And that's the wrong side. So just a quick note, you cannot do implicit typing when the array on an array when the array has multiple types inside of it. So now it does two things. So now we've essentially passed in multiple behaviors into this one method.
Mm-hmm.
And we've done that with passing in an array of these strategies. So does this syntax need any explaining, Zach?
Why don't you go through exactly how line 47 works for me?
Okay, line 47 works because we are creating a new array, and then we're stuffing two things into that array.
Okay.
So if I wanted to be explicit, we could do this.
And those two new things are arrays anyway, yeah?
No.
No, they're not. Okay. Good to know. And then run array. Okay.
Yep.
All right, cool.
That would be equivalent. Next quick thing is I'm going to throw a new piece of syntax at you just for fun.
Sure.
To see how you do.
Sure.
Params.
Okay.
Now you can give this keyword params to any method that takes a array, and this has to be the last argument, or in this case it's the first and the last argument. So we couldn't, if we have params right there, we couldn't pass another argument at the end. We'll get in there. But we could pass in additional arguments before this params. And what this params lets us do is, it's really cool, it's a really nice time saver. This is actually how string.format itself works. But we can pass in new echo strategy, comma, new echo plus high strategy. And this basically turns into that huge array thing that we saw before.
Okay.
So this params keyword will save a lot of typing.
But it can only be used on the last argument.
The last argument, and the argument must be an array.
Okay.
And if we run this, we'll get
Same
what we
thing.
expect.
Yeah.
Okay, so now how do we turn this into using delegates? And in this case, we'll show multicast delegates. So we're going to actually replace this pretty much with the exact same code we had before, which is really cool. However, on the and then we have to replace this with strategies.invoke or strategies just paren. And to do the multicaster delegate, we have to first define the delegate right here, the delegate variable, items, and then we'll have equals, and then we'll make this a nice little lambda. Because lambdas are nice, and then we'll do items plus equals, and then a second lambda, which is even cooler.
Okay. So that'll take in whatever we typed, and the next line it'll take in whatever we typed and append hi to the end of it, just like we had before.
Yep. And then so essentially we have this we're defining this delegate, and then we're pointing it to a method. In this case, this method happens to be a lambda. And then we're saying plus equals, and then we're pointing it to another method, and this method happens to be a lambda. And then we're passing it into runner, just like we did before with that single delegate. We don't have to do anything special.
Right, we just don't have to call all these extra methods to make this happen.
And then the real nice thing is up there inside of run, we don't have a for each loop, and we're not having to walk through and
right.
invoking each one individually. Since it's a multicast, they're all going to get called. That's on the invocation list for the guy.
Yep. And so, yeah, at this point I can show something else that's cool. Let's say we didn't want to pass in all our strategies into run. Let's give console runner a public action string, and we'll just call these observers. And then observers needs to be capitalized. And then we'll just invoke it like that. And then we will run it like this, and this will throw an error, and I'll say exactly why this throws an error, but could you possibly see the error that this will throw, Zach?
I'm trying my very best to look.
Yeah, that's a very important point you're making right now, Nelson, so definitely try to see if you can guide him to the answer.
Okay, so you see
him to the answer.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it right off the bat.
Well, you notice that observers is a public field on console runner?
Yes.
And then we're invoking it right here.
Yes.
But we're just calling .run directly at a console runner. We're not actually setting observers to
Yeah, we're not
anything.
doing anything with it.
So what is observers at the moment? If you had to guess, what would since it's just a variable, what's in it?
Actually, I can tell you it should be whatever the user has typed, isn't it? No?
Well, yeah, I think Jason means what does this variable contain? Because we don't set it to anything.
I don't know.
Right here.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, well, like all reference types, observers or delegate isn't a reference type, so it is initialized to null.
Okay.
No different than if he also put another field up there that was a public int x, and then
int is a
it's a value type, but here's I'm trying to simplify it a little bit more, Nelson. So right now, you don't see where x is ever being assigned. Now x is a value type, so it's just got 0 in it.
Right.
But it's not being assigned. So you don't see anywhere down in the code where observers
is set to anything.
That's right, where it's set to anything. Very good. That's all I was trying to get across to him, Nelson.
Okay. So we have that.
I can tell you where I'm not going to say I got confused, but where I was just kind of reading something incorrectly, I suppose. I realized we established this here. It was this line that threw me off, because we have the read line being stored inside input, and then I saw this line and was wondering if the input was then being stored inside observers.
I see, and I'm glad you said that, because that will help make this a little bit easier to get across to you. Since his observers is a delegate, Nelson's just simply using the shorthand way of calling
on observers and sending it input, but
observers doesn't point to anything.
Right, observers has no functionality, and that's the thing about delegates, is that They're just a way to reference functionality.
Yeah, there you go. So now he's being very explicit in
Right.
what it's doing. It's invoking, but it's not referencing anything yet.
Right.
So as he's saying, it's a reference type, so it's null at the moment.
That I'm okay with. And that gives us an error. Right.
Here comes the error.
Because we need to give some sort of functionality for observers to reference.
And take a look at what the error is. Null reference exception.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm totally cool with that.
So that means that whenever we use delegates in this way, we always have to check for null.
And then what? You give some sort of default behavior?
I could. In this case, it will be...
I thought you were talking like Yoda for a minute. Read the docs, you should. Yes.
So in this case, we will get
Best
another
error
exception.
ever. Yes.
But in this case, it'll be something that we can do something with. Okay, so we have that. So let's set observers to something.
Okay.
Let's set it to a lambda again.
I love lambdas.
Yep.
Okay.
And
so
in this case,
setting it to whatever they write, and now you're
Yep.
just repeating it back out.
and then just like before, we can set multiple
Close.
I think I'm in insert mode. There we go.
There you go.
Or not insert mode, overwrite mode. Okay, in this case, we're setting it to...
Two
Actually, I
things.
used the wrong ones. We have to plus equals it.
Thank
we
you.
don't just say
Dang it,
equals,
that
we
makes so
equals.
much more sense now, because it looked like you were just overwriting it.
Yeah. So now that we're plus equalsing it, we got that.
Yep.
Appending it. We got that. Okay, so there's one big problem with this, and I don't really expect you to see this off the bat, Zach.
Okay.
But here's something that is perfectly legal at this point. Okay. So, do you think you know what will happen?
Well, I mean, off the top of my head, my gut impulse is that we're just going to report back, hey, but that doesn't seem like that should work either, because hey is not necessarily functionality.
Well, we're invoking observers with these
two
guys
things,
set.
and we're sending that in. Okay, I see what you're saying. So,
Right.
so I mean, if that's the way it works, we should get hey and then hey hi.
Yep. And you can kind of see where this is a problem. I mean, this is kind of this private sort of thing that we have on this console runner class. Being able to invoke it directly would lead to being able to shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah, and he's saying private because it's part of. Well, you can
Yeah,
look
it's
at
not.
it.
It's not actually private.
Yeah, it's not
but
actually
part
private,
of.
but it's part of what's being used in Run.
Right.
So Run kind of needs that. It's not really been something that's set up to provide external functionality for anyone who wants to call it.
Mhm.
So that causes a problem, or
I can see
could
that.
definitely cause a problem.
Because other people who might be able to manually invoke these delegates, and there would be an issue because that would make code kind of weird.
Right.
So, in order to fix this in .NET, they provided us with events. Adding that event keyword
Mm-hmm.
changes absolutely nothing about the code, except that this is an error, and this is invalid.
Okay. So it can't invoke anymore?
Yep. And the next thing is when you have an event, you can only append to it. You cannot set it like we did right here.
Okay.
So we have to say plus equals, but the behavior is the exact same.
Okay. So it's like it goes from doing nothing to doing nothing and this one thing, and then doing nothing, this one thing, and something else.
Huh?
Never mind. I thought it made sense for a second, but I realized it could be confusing.
That's as bad as his this and that.
Now, that was awesome. I actually missed that example. I really wish we could find more ways to work this and that into the same sentence. Anyway, sorry.
So we have this event, and all this event keyword does, it says nobody but this console runner class can invoke this delegate.
Okay.
Period.
Okay.
And so we still use it in the same way, both inside of
Almost,
console runner and
almost the
outside.
same way. We
Mhm.
can't
Almost the
just
same.
set it. Everybody can
Right.
just subscribe to it by using plus equals.
Yep. So the code will behave in the exact same way.
Right. Well, it seems like what you've done is like now it starts off with whatever its base functionality is, which is to do nothing. It doesn't do anything by itself. And now all you can do is add on existing things into it with your lambdas here.
Well, here's an interesting thing.
Uh-huh.
If I were to set this to, if I were to do that,
Mm-hmm.
I'll still get an exception
Okay.
because it's still null.
It still never got set to anything. Okay.
Yep.
I see what you're saying.
An interesting way you can think about events. Do you understand properties?
Mhm.
Like, have you ever played with those? So you have the kind of public property with getters and setters, and they delegate to an internal field.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if I were to say public int hey get set, don't you love my names?
I do. I really do.
And then we had ReSharper just write out all this code for us. This is equivalent. So we have this private int hey and then public int hey, and it has a getter and setter.
Yeah.
You can think of events in the exact same way, and I'll demonstrate that by a special syntax where you probably won't see very much.
Mm-hmm.
But what you can do is, I believe this is the one. I'll actually nuke that because ReSharper didn't quite get it right this time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a private action. I'm going to make a private delegate. And then I'm going to use that in here instead of the public one.
Okay.
And then I'm going to use a special syntax on this public one with, instead of get and set, there's two different ones on events. They're add and remove.
Okay. Which ties into how you mentioned they worked in the first place, how you can only use the plus equals.
Yes. Exactly. So this is, again, this is absolutely equivalent code
Mm-hmm.
because I'm basically writing this public interface to this private delegate, and just like on properties, I am wrapping it with a interface that can only be added and removed from, it can't be invoked. It hides the invocation method functionality.
This is equivalent code, as you said, but is there a circumstance under which this would be more appropriate than the way that it was written before?
In all of my experience as a .NET programmer, I have never used this functionality.
Okay.
The only reason I'm bringing it up is to outline that an event is just a public-facing way to access a delegate.
What is
Okay.
kind of
That's
cool,
interesting.
though, is you could actually deny a subscriber.
Oh yeah, I could just say return. Bam. And now nobody can
Nobody
subscribe
can
to this event.
subscribe.
So yeah, that's an important thing to realize, that that's how events really work. And if you just use this instead, it basically hides that code from you. So it's just a shorthand to do the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can just use it as normal. Okay, so that's kind of getting into delegates, multicast delegates, and events. But let's show a more practical example.
Please.
Have you ever used WinForms before, Zach?
No, I have not.
Well, I think you'll like this. So what I have to do to use WinForms, and WinForms is the GUI abstraction, graphical user interface abstraction over Win32 for .NET.
Yeah.
The first thing we have to do is reference a few namespaces. We have to reference system dot, and I always forget this one. because I haven't done this.
Windows.forms, right there.
There we go. And then we have to add system.drawing too for other stuff that we might use. So I'm just control clicking. Both of these are selected. Just hit OK. We added both of these references. And now what we're going to do is we're going to make a class. I'm going to call this main form. And he's going to extend from form. We're going to include the system.windows.form namespace. And we're going to give him a constructor. And then down here, we're going to instantiate him. And then we're going to run application.run form. And application.run is a blocking function or method that will sit here and run this form until it is closed, then it'll return.
Okay.
So if we run this, we'll get
We get a
form.
window.
Yay. And we close it, and we get nothing. And you notice how that console window popped up in the background?
Yes.
That's kind of annoying. And to turn it off, we right-click our console application 2, go down to Properties, hit from console application to Windows application. And the only difference is now there's no console, there's just that window.
Oh, nice.
So let's add a button to this window. So we're going to say var button equals new button. And then we're going to use the object initialization syntax, because I like that syntax. We're going to unindent it.
Yeah.
And then we're going to say text equals click me. And then we're going to use a practical instance of an event, which is this click guy right here. This click guy is an event with the delegate type of event handler, and it's system.windows.forms.button.click, or control.click, sorry.
Okay.
And then we're going to use a... Okay, first of all, the event handler delegate is a function that returns void and accepts a object and an event arguments.
Just in my opinion, before you use a lambda, I'd actually use a method here for Zach's sake.
Okay, just for you, Zach.
Thank you. Means a lot to me, Nelson.
And then we're going to say button.click
Strike 2.
plus equals button click.
Okay.
And then when we do button.click, we're going to do message box.show you clicked a button. And we run this, and we do not get anything. And the reason we don't get anything, again, this isn't going to be something about Windows Forms, but whenever we want to actually, we've constructed this button, but now we have to add it to the form, and we do it by controls.add button.
Makes sense.
And then we run it, and we get this button.
I'm with you so far.
And one quick thing, again, this isn't about WinForms, but this is going to drive me crazy. If before you run your first form, just do application.enable visual styles, and we'll get a pretty button.
Oh, well, and that makes all the difference, really.
Yeah, it does. Okay, so does this sort of make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
So if it makes sense, where did object sender and event args come from?
They just come in from the button itself. I mean, I'm trying to think. I was actually right as I said that I was cool with it. I was thinking about asking that, and then he nailed me. I was like, dang it. Do we even need them?
Yes, we do, because we need to conform
to this standard. Okay.
To what
to this
standard?
Event handler.
Well, because you've just the standard that you've defined with your button click method.
That we defined?
All right, now you just confused me. That's it. I'm
Okay.
out.
You want to see something cool, Zach? Watch this. I'm going to control click on click.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to wait for a little bit.
Only reason I'm pushing on this is because this is important.
That's fine.
I'm going to click harder on click. There we go.
Yeah, it's pressure sensitive. You gotta remember that.
Okay, so you see public event system.event handler click. So this is the event that this button class, or well, I think it's control that defines click. This is the declaration of that. And if we look at event handler,
there's the key.
Public delegate void event handler object sender system.event args.
So it's sending it in by default.
So event handler is a delegate.
Yeah.
All events, anytime you use event takes a delegate. Okay, so this built-in delegate, event handler, is what's being used by all of the events that have been set up for things like a button click, etc., etc. And so, since this is using a built-in delegate, that's the key thing to remember. This signature has already been set up for us where we have a sender, which is, well, Nelson will talk about that in a second, and our event args, which He probably won't talk much about that right now because it's not very important. But we have to match this signature with any method or any Lambda expression that we use.
I get that, but
when we're
why?
subscribing.
Okay, but to flip the question back around, why is it then when we call on button click, so we got button.click plus equals button click, why are we not actually sending anything?
Because we are attaching this method to this event.
Right. We're saying when you go to fire off the event, this is what's going to get invoked. We're subscribing to click. I guess I can point with the mouse.
Yeah.
We're subscribing to click with button click. So this method right here is subscribing to click.
Okay.
So when somebody clicks the button, notice he's using the plus equals right here. So we could have multiple guys fire off. So when somebody clicks the button, what happens is this guy is going to get called. But our signature has to match because, remember, this event right here, event has to use a delegate.
Right.
But we're using a built-in delegate that has this signature, return type of void. It takes in an object and an event args. So we have to match that to use the built-in one. Now, we can use events with our own custom defined
So, okay,
delegates.
so it's just something you just kind of have to know about. You have to know that about using button.click.
Right?
Yes.
And
Okay.
this might make it more clear, or it might make it less clear.
Actually,
But I'm gonna
I got it, but do it
try.
anyway.
Remember how we had this syntax with our
Yeah.
own custom stuff?
So now
You're
fire
just
it
adding
off.
another one, right?
Yep.
I just wanted you to see where that came from.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, and then maybe it might be important to talk about why we're even passing it, why the .NET framework has said we are going to pass in sender as a part of all these methods,
Absolutely.
or all these events. And we can only really demonstrate that if we do two things. First thing is we're going to break this button out into a private button. The next thing we're going to do is make a second button. And then we're going to say button equals new button. And then button 2 equals new button.
Except
Except what?
you might want to get rid of the plus equals.
Online,
I will
online.
want to. Yeah.
There we go.
Okay. Zach should have been paying more attention.
I was actually just about to mention it.
That was Zach that said it.
Yeah, for the record, I was like, why do we still have plus equals? And for a second, I thought you knew what you were doing, and then I was like, no way, that's got to be a mistake.
In WPF, it's position, not location. And then notice that point brought in this using system.drawing because point is a member of system.drawing. And then point's exactly what you'd expect it to in X and Y position.
Okay.
And then we're going to remove these guys, and we're going to say controls.add button, and then controls.add button 2.
Sure.
And then we're going to run this, and now we have two buttons.
Yes.
So let's say we want to reuse the same button click event handler for the click method on, or a click event on both these buttons.
Well, that explains immediately why you need a sender, because you need to know who the heck just called it.
Very good.
Exactly.
And
then so if we
the arguments,
run
I
this-
guess, is just how you differentiate the functionality between the two.
Event args is a argument class that doesn't actually do anything.
Yay. That's my favorite kind, really.
The only reason why this guy even exists is to make him more, I guess, usable, or to make things more standard when you actually have an event args that actually does something.
It's like a status symbol, really. No,
well, it really is. It's like they just stick it there for convention. Like if you have a mouse move click event or mouse move event, sorry, the event args will actually be a mouse move event args, and the args will contain the X and Y position of the mouse.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a way of passing additional information.
If you need it.
Right. So we'll do if sender equals button 1 message box dot show button 1 clicked, else if sender equals button 2, and there's no button 1. I realize this. I'm going to fix that in a second, so don't freak out on me.
But why is there no button 1, Nelson? I just wanted to point out.
Don't
that
make
there's
him
some-
walk over here.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that there's no button 1.
Resharp already told me.
Nice.
Yep. So that's how you use sender. And sender becomes really important when you have maybe a kind of a large event handler and you want to reuse functionality between multiple controls. And then you want to be able to, in some way, differentiate between the different senders as a part of that code. And then you can do that.
Would it be wrong to want to use a case switch in there? Or switch case? I always screw that up.
You can. If you really wanted to. Personally, I don't use switches very often, if at all.
Yeah.
That's just my particular style, and that's because there's some limitations with switch. So in this case, I'm just using if.
You could simplify this just to demonstrate by taking the ifs out altogether and simply cast the sender, and message box out its text.
So we'll do button.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So whatever the button actually says is what comes out? Yeah.
And we do that with the cast.
But then we're never going to get button 1 because technically there is no button 1.
That's true.
I'm just saying that could be confusing to some users.
No, I'm just... Whatever, Zach.
I was told before the video started to be ruthless. Click me X. Nice. Very nice.
Yeah. So is that cool?
It's very cool. And it makes perfect sense.
A much more practical example, especially when getting into delegates as well with a very small application, because again, it's very difficult to demonstrate delegates with very small applications. But when the button class was put together, obviously they knew that it was going to be clickable.
A button's going to need to do a lot of different
but
things.
You can't hardwire it into its final functionality when it's clicked. When
you have like a library of like 1 million buttons, and it's like, this button is what you use when you want to open the calculator. This button is what you want to do when you want to play solitaire.
So that is an awesome example of where delegates become important. It's like, all right, well, we're going to delegate off whatever functionality is going to occur to whoever you are going to subscribe to it as the delegate.
Oh, yeah.
And there's, just to reiterate over what Jason said, there's 2 times you'd use a delegate. One is as an event. So, and that's just exactly what Jason described. The second reason is when you have a huge piece of code and you want to be able to switch out small parts of that code with predefined stuff, and that's what you saw with LINQ.
That's what I took away from the delegate discussion last time, was that ability to take your functionality and store it in a variable-like state so that you can swap out larger blocks of functionality within within a method, more or less, or within your program.
So then you get this really nice hierarchy of, and you can go really crazy with this, where you have this behavior, and then in the center the behavior isn't necessarily defined, and then you swap it out exactly.
Right.
Awesome.
That's awesome. That clarifies a lot of the delegate, especially the addition of events. That's just awesome.
Yep.
Was there anything else you wanted to cover in this video, Nelson?
No, I think that's about it.
Well, then I want to thank you for your time and for all the extra clarification. That was awesome.
Okay.
And I think I've said awesome like 7 times now.
I think so. Maybe 8.
Yeah.
Now. Okay. Thanks a lot, Nelson. Thank you, Zach. And thank you, all of our member sponsors out there, for joining in. And that will wrap up this episode of Nelson's Corner. Thanks a lot, guys.
That was awesome.